Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Twigg. It's a delight to serve under your chairmanship, and I'm absolutely delighted and grateful to welcome and thank my friend, the Honourable Member for Milton Keynes North, for securing this debate on the social impacts of autonomous last-mile delivery. How right he is to raise this as an important issue, and I'm grateful to all those who have spoken in this debate. Only last week, I spoke to the Transport Select Committee about self-driving vehicles, and of course, this is a very large potential sector, and last-mile autonomous delivery will be just one part of it over time, and part of what we think of as the connected and automated mobility sector, which, if fully realised, it is estimated could have a potential market value of some £42 billion by 2035 and create possibly 38,000 new skilled jobs. Now, to support that sector, the Government Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles has helped to secure some £600 million in funding since 2015. In sharp contrast to the dismal description given by the opposition front bench a few moments ago, this is a thoroughly thriving, technology-driven sector in which the UK is a European and, in many respects, a global leader. But we need to continue to make it as such, and therefore the point that has been raised about legislation is absolutely right. And as colleagues will recall from my testimony in front of the Transport Select Committee, I was as strong on that point to them as I am today. There are tremendous benefits to be had, and not merely economic ones, and it's good to focus on the social benefits in this debate, because they include, and they've been touched on by members across this chamber already, potentially connecting our rural communities, reducing isolation, providing better access, and making it easier for friends to for people to see friends and family. And of course, autonomous last-mile delivery can help to deliver goods and services to people's doors. So all of these are very attractive potential benefits from the realisation of the potential in this sector. If I may, I'm going to touch on some of the benefits and then some of the potential drawbacks that government is wrestling with in this area. The first of these benefits is one of safety. Almost 90% of all recorded road accidents involve human error as a contributory factor. And if one looks at the most recent provisional figures up to the year ending June 2022, that was a period in which almost 5 people on average died on our roads every day. We must bring that number down, and self-driving vehicles have the potential to reduce driver error and thereby improve road safety, which has plateaued over the last few years. The House will be aware that the government recently consulted on establishing a safety ambition for self-driving vehicles to be that equivalent to the driving of a competent and careful driver. And the effect of that in real terms is that a self-driving vehicle would not drive stressed in an aggressively or would be driven aggressively or in a way that reflects fatigue on the part of the driver. It would not seek to take illegal shortcuts. It would not be inebriated at the wheel. Beyond this, yes, of course.
Perhaps he'd like to come up to Milton Keynes and see for himself how non-stressed our delivery robots are.
I would be delighted. I thank the Honourable Member very much for his kind invitation, and I would be delighted to come up to Milton Keynes to see these fabulous autonomous last-mile delivery vehicles in operation, because they do represent a very interesting technology, and of course we are very interested in that. My predecessor, I'm very pleased to say, was able to visit last year, and I will certainly aim to do so, and I thank him for that invitation. Let me just touch on a couple of other aspects which I think are quite useful just to reflect on. One is the importance of using vehicles that are appropriately sized and designed for a specific task, thereby reducing the effects of collision from vehicles that are potentially overly large for what's being required. And these little small autonomous vehicles are an example of that. So I think it's right to focus on the safety case, but it's also right to look at the issue of emissions and net zero, where there is significant potential for autonomous last-mile delivery vehicles to make an impact. That could be through being modern vehicles that have zero tailpipe emissions by 2030 in line with the government's policy. It could come through the use of more efficient and better optimised routes between starting point and destination, and more efficient automated driving styles. It could come through the right sizing of vehicles, as I have touched on. The development of custom-made vehicles can also help to increase vehicle utilization, and that should reduce the impact on carbon emissions overall, because it creates greater productivity and use from an existing trip. And of course, finally, we have the positive impact that comes from improving the access that people have to receiving goods at their home or business. All of those things. This, too, is an important further advantage of this technology. However, we should also focus, and the government's under an obligation to focus on, some of the potential limitations as well. I mean, one of them has already been touched on, and that is that there should be a proper measure of social consent with the introduction to this technology, and therefore that it should be done in as careful a way as possible, but also in a way that is affordable, equitable, accessible, and safe. All of those are metrics which could potentially lose public support if they were breached, and it's important, therefore, to adhere and to respect each of those important values. Now, it also, when we think about the safety of vehicles, that will play a key role in acceptability, because there's nothing that the public likes less, as we've already discussed in this debate, than the introduction of a technology or a way of using a technology which has potentially prejudicial safety effects. And, of course, that doesn't just mean the vehicles themselves, it also means any changes to infrastructure that may be required to make them work effectively. If we look more widely, there are concerns about cybersecurity with all autonomous vehicles, and small ones are no exception. And the Department for Transport works closely with the National Cybersecurity Centre in order to address this. And it also, we as a nation also chair the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe group, and that has developed 2 new international regulations that focus on cybersecurity and on software updates. And finally, of course, the department's very engaged with the question of cyber skills, and works as part of the National Cyber Strategy with other departments to make sure that we have a proper cadre of cyber professionals in and alongside government, as well as in the private sector. Now, this technology has tremendous implications for cybersecurity. It also, it's important to mention, potentially affects, potentially negatively, potentially positively, employment. Of course, there can be a threat to existing jobs from any new technology, but it's also been suggested and it's been projected that there may be as many as 38,000 jobs potentially to come from implementing this technology. So that is a mixed blessing. In terms of remote driving, that is a slightly different technology. It doesn't necessarily, it's distinct from self-driving and automation, but it is a technology that potentially sits alongside this self-driving technologies, and again needs to be conducted with road safety as a key consideration. So we therefore need to factor both sides, the gains and the potential drawbacks, and proceed in a careful and consistent and carefully thought through way. And that is what the department is doing. The need for legislation is well understood, let me reassure the Chamber, but it's also important to make sure that it's a legislative framework set up to accommodate all of these concerns, as well as to maximise the potential benefit. And I couldn't end this speech without referring to the chair of the Transport Select Committee's brilliant idea that there should be a further national competition, which I hope the Transport Committee will organise for suitable tunes to be played. And I think we can go one step further. I would like to suggest that the Rolling Stones be nominated as the band for the autonomous local transport sector, because they brilliantly, in their work, cover both of the strengths and the drawbacks of this technology. So we start, if successful, this technology is one that could make us happy. It can use these marvellous vehicles as a beast of burden. It allows them to operate any time, and therefore they can be midnight ramblers. Tragically, of course, you can't always get what you want. Sometimes you're waiting on a friend, and indeed, you may be that you can't hear these little machines knocking. Above all, we want to avoid being turned by them into street-fighting man, let alone suffering a 19th nervous breakdown. With that, let me take my seat. Thank you, Mr. Twigg.